Good morning.
Hello, everybody.
Yes.
Morning.
Hi. Glad to welcome you and to see all of you. Everyone had a I hope everyone had a good conclusion to Passover and enjoyed uh, chametz once again. Enjoyed some things that perhaps you couldn't have during Passover. The joke I always tell every year is that I break Passover with a bread sandwich. A piece of bread in between two pieces of bread. To me, that's heavenly. But I've never actually done that. But it's still a line. Um, so with Passover done, and of course, the next thing is to focus on the next big holiday, which I will acknowledge.
Mm.
Shavuot is really a holiday that I would say it is the most underrated of the entire Jewish calendar. I really find it to be something that is often forgotten.
Mm-mm.
One reason why it tends to be forgotten is because of when it falls during the secular calendar. It's usually sometime in late May to early June. And depending on how far into June it gets, sometimes it gets a little bit uh, sort of overshadowed by the beginning of summer, and at least in some places, the summer breaks for people and things of that nature. So it can be that can be a factor. Um, Also, it's a 2-day holiday, right? So it's not in this buildup of this week plus long trek that we do for Sukkot or for Passover. And there's also the fact that with Shavuot, there's no major home project involved. Sukkot, you have the building of the sukkah, right? With Passover, you have the all the koshering for Passover and getting ready for a Seder and all the different foods and dishes and things like that. These are major things that one would do in the home. Shavuot, you don't really have to do all that much. And to me, I think the fact that it is a little lower maintenance makes it kind of an underrated holiday, but one that we should still embrace. So, what is it? When is it? Let's sort of go over the basics of that. Um, Shavuot, it takes place about seven. It takes place 7 weeks after Passover begins. The idea is that you count the Omer for 7 weeks, and when you get to day 50, that's Shavuot. Why is that important? Essentially, if you look at the timeline offered by the book of Exodus, from the day that the Israelites leave Egypt to when they get to Mount Sinai and then experience the revelation, that's a total of 7 weeks. And then what we are doing is celebrating what happens on Mount Sinai. This harkens back to the very first session we had of Judaism 101, where we talked about that question, what happened at Mount Sinai? So we're not necessarily going to recap all of that, but it's the traditionalist, or I would say the most traditionalist answer that we have to that, the idea that the Torah was given to Moses on Mount Sinai, that colors so much of the way that we celebrate Shavuot. In short, Shavuot is supposed to be the anniversary of the giving of the Torah. That's how it is traditionally understood. And then we essentially go from there. So again, one can argue, question the theology of it all, but that's how we do it. And um, we have created a couple of really lovely rituals around that anniversary. So Shavuot is a 2-day holiday in the diaspora. It's a 1-day holiday in Israel. It is something that is mentioned in the Torah. It is known as Yom HaBikurim in the Torah because it is, again, very much attached to the agricultural cycle. Um, of the 3 pilgrimage festivals, Shavuot is the only one that I've actually been in Israel to celebrate. It's the only one that I've actually had the chance to be in Israel for that. And what they do is one of the things that they did is they pointed the group that I was in to a verse from the book of Deuteronomy, which essentially lists the 7 species. We talked about the 7 species when we were celebrating Tu B'Shvat. So it is a celebration of what the land of Israel produces. That's the agricultural piece of this holiday. Um, it is more known, at least today, as the anniversary of the giving of the Torah. So we've created a couple of rituals with this. Again, neither of this require a great amount of um, preparation in the home, which again I think is sometimes it's kind of nice to not have to worry about overhauling everything to celebrate a holiday. So that's one of the things I feel is kind of underrated. It's like, okay, you don't have to completely undo everything. Um, and what we do is so one of the customs is at minimum on the first day of Shavuot is to eat dairy instead of meat. Now, for those who are vegetarian, you're going to say, manish tana, right? Why is this different than any other night? Well, I'm not going to tell you to eat meat instead. It's okay to still be vegetarian. Um, the reason why we have dairy and specifically milk products is because of the idea, first of all, of Israel being the land of flowing with milk and honey. And then, look, again, I've been to Israel before. They do not have, 2% streams and skim streams or anything like that. They don't actually have that. But that's the expression that's been around since the Torah. So also because the idea of flowing is very much attached to the Torah. The idea is that the Torah is a living and breathing document, that it is always that the ideas of taught in the Torah are ever flowing. So the idea is, whenever possible, to have a dairy meal and to eat dairy on at the very least the first day of Shavuot. Some people do it for both days. Um, Now, with that said, like what is that involved? Well, um, probably the one cultural thing that Shavuot is best known for is cheesecake, because to many people, cheesecake is the ultimate uh, dairy indulgence. Um, Unpopular opinion, uh, again, which I've been very upfront about my bizarre palates. I don't like cheesecake. I know. It's okay. More for you. More for you. Enjoy. Look, ice cream. I'm good with ice cream. I mean, totally. You can do that too. And please understand,
Lynx casserole?
it's okay.
Cookle?
Google's good. Yeah,
There's lots of different kinds, but I mean,
lots of different kinds.
yeah,
Yeah.
you really.
No, I'm weird.
Okay,
I'm weird.
that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I mean, look.
That's fine. Just, so, like, can I ask you something about counting the Omer? Since
Yeah,
we
sure,
throw
sure.
in an extra day for Passover,
So we throw in
if,
an extra date.
well, we
Yeah,
throw in an extra day. In Israel, they do 7 days because in the book it says 7 days. We throw in an extra day, we do it for 8. So then
yeah.
if you start counting after the second night, then you land on the second night of the second day of Shavuot, which they don't have in Israel. So we're celebrating a different day, actually, right?
So
No,
we're
that's not
so
effective.
yeah. So we're not. But good question, but we're not because we start the counting on the second night of Passover.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Um,
So it's you start counting the second night as if there aren't two nights.
Correct.
Oh,
Correct.
okay. Okay.
So right. So in
Yeah, I
Israel,
didn't quite get that. Okay.
yeah, no problem. So in other words,
I
whereas
see. It's a little
whereas the
skitsy. Yeah. Okay.
you're good.
The
No, no,
extra day, just,
yeah,
all the extra days we throw in, it kind of throws everything off. If you have friends in Israel and it's like it's kind of funny. Anyway, all right.
right.
I get it. I get it.
All good, all good. No, so it's okay. So yeah, so there is a custom that like specifically you're eating cheesecake. And also quick plug, when at the Knoxville program that will take place in Knoxville on May the 3rd. Um, Unfortunately, I'm not able to be there. I was at Nashville last year, but I'm not able to be there this year. But if you're in town, I encourage you to attend. It's a lovely uh, cultural get together, and every Jewish organization sells a different kind of Jewish food and or food associated with Jewish. I mean, they're just things they make really well. And I think we're making cheesecake, right? Yes,
Cool.
no.
Yes, we're going to have cheesecake
Oh, we changed
and
it.
leftover Hamantaschen.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
All
I
right.
thought we were
So
doing kugel. Okay. Cheesecake. Okay, cool.
We
yeah. So
changed.
so there will be cheesecake. So again, um, you know, I don't want to yuck your yum. More for you. Enjoy, enjoy. And a lot of people love it. So it's all good. So yeah, I know some people who their tradition for at least the first night of Shavuot is this is I would say maybe a little unconventional, but that their dinner is like the best kind of like bagel, cream cheese, and lox, where like they bring in like, so the equivalent would basically to get the best stuff from Potchki's in Knoxville. Or now when I was living in New Jersey, New Jersey, they have bagels. New Jersey, uh, they do have the New York recipe. They really do. But like they'll go and they'll get. So like I just knew people who would go and they would get the best bagels in town. They would get, different flavors of cream cheese. They would get, and then they would go like get like really good, lox and whitefish and that sort of thing. And big, that was their big indulgence, was to enjoy that. So, anyway, a lot of different ways of enjoying whatever dairy that you enjoy. They're actually The website Exploring Judaism, which is hopefully I've mentioned at least a couple times, it is a wonderful um, way to, kind of uh, consolidate and add to the information that we have in this class. It is run by the conservative movement. It is a meant to be an emporium of general Jewish knowledge to especially for a conservative movement audience. And they have a little shop in which they sell a number of things. One thing they sell, by the way, they sell like a scratch off Omer counter, where each day it's like a little lottery scratch card, so you can, like, an easy way to remember when the Omer is. So anyway, what they do for Shavuot is they sell, I'm not kidding you, these little pouches to put your lactate tablets, so that when you go to synagogue and want to have some cheesecake, you've got your lactate right there. So I think it's cute. Um, so then we'll talk about another custom in a moment. But I do want to not forget that I asked the question earlier: when is it? When is it going to be this year? It's actually going to fall during Memorial Day weekend this year. So it's going to start on a Thursday night. That's Thursday night. See, now I've got to look. I want to give you the exact date. I mean, I know people can easily look it up. It's going to start Thursday night, May 21st. And then Yom Tov is on that Friday, the 22nd, and then the second day is going to be Saturday, the 23rd. So anyway, so that is so that's one thing that we are that we do in terms of the of when it's going to take place. I'm going to be that will be a time that I'm going to be in Knoxville, and I'm going to be a part of things. So that leads us to the second big custom regarding Shavuot, which is what is known as Tikkun Leil Shavuot. It is the idea that on the first night of Shavuot, we are learning Torah in one way or another. We have the rabbis in the Knoxville community. We haven't sat down to plan it yet, but we are going to do something on that Thursday night, the 21st. My guess is that it will either be at Heskamuna or at Temple Bethel, one of the two, but it's going to include contributions and teachings from the area rabbis, from myself, Rabbi Shush, Rabbi Soroti, Rabbi Ahuva. That's my anticipation. Obviously, if any of that changes, I'll let you know. But regardless, there will be a program May 21st. It will happen that night. And we'll fill you in on details from there. But it's going to be fun. And we've done it twice before, the last couple of years, where we've all gotten together, and basically each teacher takes a turn to teach for maybe 15, 20 minutes about a particular topic. Sometimes we make it about the same. We try to, have the same topic every year that everybody teaches a different aspect of. Sometimes it's just whatever people are up for. So we'll have to see. This is how it is done in its most traditional form. The most traditional form is that you start learning pretty much from the point where you have evening services, and then you learn through the night. You pull an all-nighter, and you do so until morning services. Now, this was the custom at the previous congregation that I led in Buffalo, New York. So now my first year there, it was COVID, so we did not do that. But the other 2 years I was there, we did. And so the way we designed it was we said, okay, well, and keep in mind that, Buffalo being so far north, when you reach, end of May, beginning of June, the sun sets very late. So you could do evening services pretty late. And then same idea, every rabbi or teacher, whoever it was, everybody did an hour. They had like a keynote teacher as the first lecture of the night. And then one thing that was really nice, I got to say, is that one of the area Orthodox rabbis walked to the synagogue and did one of the teachings, which was certainly appreciated. The one condition that he had was that he didn't want to be on the live stream. He didn't want to, so it's like, okay, so you had to be in person for his presentation. Yeah, okay, you know what? The fact that he came in and he was a part of it, it meant a lot. It meant a lot to a lot of us. So, what I did, since this was the synagogue where I worked, hosted that particular event, I always took the I always took the last I always took the last teaching before we started services, because and what I told everyone was that it's like, okay, when you get to my teaching, I can't say that it'll make any sense, but it will be entertaining, whatever it will be. So so we had some good conversations and things like that. I think we may have taken like a 20-minute break in between or something like that. And then the idea was to we didn't go all the way until starting morning services at 9:30 in the morning, though, because that would have been way too, that would have been way too many sessions to plan. So essentially, we went until 5 a.m., which was the earliest time that we could justifiably start doing the morning service. And we did the morning service. Took us a couple hours or whatever it is. So sometime, 7:15, 7:30 a.m., we ended the session with breakfast. Somebody, people prepared breakfast and we had breakfast, and then we went home and went to bed. And there were copious amounts of caffeine available throughout the evening, and it was interesting. It was very much a a cross section of the different teaching styles of different rabbis and teachers of the community. So what we're going to be doing in Knoxville is going to be, I would say, a mini version of that. My guess is that it's going to be a couple hours. It will end, like 10 o'clock-ish. It's PM. You can go home and have a normal night's sleep. You can come back the next day and have services at 9:30 in the morning. Like, we're not going to necessarily do that. There's no law saying you have to stay up all night. But what's this idea of staying up all night? Where does that come from? The idea is that if you look at Exodus chapter 19, God doesn't say what the Israelites are about to experience at the mountain. God doesn't say, hey, guess what? You're going to be getting like the coolest book, or you're going to be getting, commandments. It's not like God says, all right, we have a book release party. I mean, it's not that. What it is, but God says, like, okay, you're going to experience something, and you got to be ready. And it actually takes them 3 days of preparation. And supposedly, the Midrash teaches us that the Israelites were so excited for whatever it was what was coming that they couldn't sleep. And so, to honor that moment of anticipation and excitement, we stay up all night learning Torah. That's the foundations of the custom. Again, if you want to go home after we're done with our program that night, stay up all night learning Torah, sei gesund, enjoy, feel free to do that. That's up to you. I'm not saying that you have to. I will probably get some sleep. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm going to be doing this by myself. So it's trying to mirror that anticipation and excitement for that. And what do we read when we read Torah for that service on the first day of Shavuot? We read the account of the Ten Commandments from the book of Exodus. So we essentially read what was to have happened on the very first Shavuot. I should also note that when we say Shavuot, Sheva is in the name. Sheva meaning the Hebrew name for 7, referring to the 7 weeks. And Shavuot and Shavua means week. Right? So technically, people call it the Feast of Weeks. So those are essentially the things that we do on Shavuot. The other thing that I would say you would look out for is that on the second day of Shavuot, a couple things happen. First of all, we do the Yizkor service, as we did on the last day of Passover. And I want to go back to something about Yizkor in a couple of moments. And if you were at synagogue with us on Thursday, you already kind of heard me make this pitch, but I'll get to that in a minute. But the other thing that we do on the second day of Shavuot is we always read from the book of Ruth. The book of Ruth is actually a relatively short book. It's 4 chapters long. There are some synagogues where they read the book in its entirety. I don't think we'll be doing that, but we'll be reading certainly, decent number of excerpts from it. Why the book of Ruth? So I may have mentioned this already, but there are 5 books in the Ketuvim, in the writings section of the Tanakh, of the Hebrew Bible. There are 5 books that are designated as Megillot, as scrolls. The most famous Megillah is Megillat Esther, the scroll of Esther, that we read on Purim. You have another Megillah, which is the scroll of Eicha, which is the book of Lamentations, which we will get to on the commemoration, at the very least, of Tisha B'Av, which takes place in the latter part of summer. We will talk about Tisha B'Av relatively soon at an upcoming session. We also read the Megillah of Kohelet, the book of Ecclesiastes, on Sukkot. We read the Megillah, the scroll of Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs. We just did that on the Shabbat of Passover. So we get to this last one of the 5, the Megillah, the scroll of Ruth, and we read it on Shavuot. Why? One reason given is that the main like the I guess the plurality of the plot of the Book of Ruth takes place on the threshing floor when Naomi and Ruth are seeking food as they are impoverished, and they are um, given an opportunity to get food by a wealthy benefactor, a benefactor that Ruth winds up marrying, a man named Boaz. So that is supposed to relate to the agricultural aspect of Shavuot. But the reason that is given a lot more credence is that of is that the fact that Ruth, after her first husband dies, remember Ruth is a Moabite woman who marries an Israelite man, and this man dies, and Ruth, still a young woman, uh, is in Moab, and she is speaking to her mother-in-law Naomi, and Naomi says, "All right, look, um, I have to go back. I have to go back to Israel. I can't stay here in Moab. And you know what? You're young. You're young. You can find somebody to marry. You can find someone who will give you children. Go ahead and I mean, it's been nice, but we're going to go our separate ways." And Ruth said, "Nope, nope, I'm going with you. Your people shall be my people. Your God will be my God." Ruth is understood to be the first convert in Israelite history. And the idea is that Ruth voluntarily accepted Torah, and therefore she is associated with Shavuot, with this embrace of Torah. So that's the main reason why Ruth is referred to and read, or at least partially, on the second day of Shavuot. So there are things to look forward to for both morning services. On the first day, you have the reading of the Ten Commandments, and on the second day, you have the Book of Ruth. And then coupled with the thing that I want to emphasize here, the idea of Yizkor. I think I've talked about Yizkor at some point in the session where we talked about death and mourning. And I did also talk about this past Thursday when we were in services for the eighth day of Passover. Yizkor, first of all, I want to express my appreciation for all those who were able to attend our services that day. That Yizkor, whether you were in person or online, it's certainly appreciated. And if you couldn't make it, okay. But I want to challenge you, if possible, to attend Yizkor the next time it happens, which will be the Saturday of May 23rd. So it's going to be the second day. So it's always the second day of Shavuot. Now, this year it's on a Saturday, which makes it easier for a lot of people. It is also the Saturday of Memorial Day weekend. You may be out of town. Okay. But if you're in town, I want to challenge you to attend it. And I want to explain why it's important. Yizkor is something that for many years, Jews did not miss Yizkor. They made a point of attending Yizkor. Yizkor takes place 4 times a year. It takes place on Yom Kippur. It takes place on Shmini Atzeret, which is, technically the end of Sukkot. It takes place on the last day of Passover, and it takes place on the latter day, the last day of Shavuot. So 4 times a year. And if you haven't been to it before, it is an insertion into the service that lasts, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 at the most. And it's a time for us to remember literally those who have passed away, loved ones who have passed away. For a long time, the it was really done only for people in those categories that Judaism has defined as a close relative, meaning one would only say Yizkor remembering a parent, child, sibling, or spouse who had passed away. Thankfully, we've, at least in our prayer book, we have expanded the categories. We have added paragraphs that we can say in remembrance of grandparents, other relatives, and also friends. Um, and I think it's really an important opportunity for a community to join together to offer support to one another as we remember these people, as we remember the people that we are closest to. So so a story from my past. My mom's father, my grandfather, Jack Ferguson, passed away when my mother was 9 years old. So I never knew him. And I remember being, a teenager when I was started to attend synagogue services regularly. And I would be with my mom, and it would be a day where we'd be doing Yizkor. And my mom would say to me, Adam, you'll stay with me, won't you? When I say Yizkor, you'll stick around, won't you? And I said, yeah, sure, sure. No problem. The reason why she was saying it with a little bit of uncertainty is because there had emerged this custom that you didn't stay in the room for Yizkor if both of your parents were still alive. Because if you did, it would bring out the evil eye. It was 100% superstition. That it was some bad luck if you stayed in the room. To this day, there are people who, if both of their parents are living, they walk out of the room during Yizkor.
Rabbi, I have a question.
Yeah.
In Orthodox Judaism, isn't Yizkor also to pray for the elevation of the soul that has departed? That's part of it. And so they also pledge to give tzedakah.
Right. And that language is very much in the Yizkor service we have as well. Yeah. So the idea of elevating the soul, just, sort of, and that's tied in with the saying of Mourner's Kaddish as well. So absolutely. So, and so it was a long time before I was, I don't know, told or it became apparent to me that, what I was doing was kind of unusual. The fact that I stayed in the room for Yizkor. And what happened then was a family friend who was concerned that he would have no one to say Kaddish for. He passed away the year after I graduated college. And he said to my mom, will you say Kaddish for me? And of course, we said yes. And so we kind of shared that responsibility. And I said, okay, well, look, whenever I'm in services, I'll say Kaddish for him. And I remember thinking to myself, well, that should be Yizkor as well. I should go to Yizkor. So even in years before I had congregational responsibilities, before I was a pulpit rabbi, I would still make sure to attend Yizkor because I was saying it for a family friend. And then I began to realize, well, I should say it also in memory of my grandfather, the one that my mom's father. And then as years passed, my three other grandparents passed away over the course of time. I feel fortunate to be the age that I am, and which none of those people in those traditional categories have passed away. My parents are both still alive, thank God, siblings, children, etc., still alive. So technically, at least according to the custom, I have no reason. I have never had a technical reason to attend Yizkor. But one of the first times I went to Yizkor on my own, a rabbi that I really like and respect, rabbi named Hillel Nori. He's actually based in Atlanta. At the time, he was in New York, and he gave a sermon about why we shouldn't leave the room during Yizkor, why we should all stay. And I remember him essentially winding it up by saying, he's like, I understand if you've always been taught that the evil eye will come if you stay in the room. I understand. But in a community of holiness, the evil eye has no power. I always appreciated that statement. In other words, are we really going to let our superstitions get in the way? I'm not saying superstitions are silly or terrible. I mean, we all have them, right? I mean, look, there are times where there are times when my favorite team is playing and I can't watch. I just, like I just can't. I mean, and because yeah, I just think that but really, what do I think? Like, I think that by sitting on a particular part of the couch, that my team is going to do better or worse. So, like, I mean, it's just like, yeah. So, like, am I affected by superstitious thinking? Sure. I think a lot of us are in certain ways. But this was a way for him to say, okay, let's take a step back. And I remember and so he said, like, look, I really hope you'll stay in the room for Yizkor. There were still people who left the room. There were still people who, and they weren't, I mean, they weren't offended by what he said. They just sort of said, okay, well, like, that's all well and good, but I have my custom. Or I actually remember talking to somebody and said, well, okay, it's going to really upset my parents if they knew I was in the room. So it's like, it's not really my superstition, but it's theirs. And I want to honor my parents. Okay. So, but the point that he was trying to make was that Yizkor is a really important opportunity to remember people, and to do so in a way that is both public and private. No one asks anyone to announce the names of the people that they are remembering. There's a part of the Yisker process in which we literally just give people time to just say the Yisker paragraph for as many people as they want, and let their minds go where they want. No one has to stand up and say, "I'm remembering this person." And no one's asking anybody to reveal their emotions. So in that sense, it's still very private, but it's public enough, if we're in the room together, to lend each other that sort of moral support. There is something about being in the same room together. I recognize if you can't make it in person and if you need to be on Zoom, I mean that, but that's, I feel that's legitimate as well. But knowing that there are others in the congregation, and you are therefore part of that congregation, I think that's meaningful as well. So anyway, I figured this would be a good opportunity for me to give a pitch to you that to join us for Yisker, if at all possible. So the next opportunity, like I mentioned, will be Saturday, May 23rd at morning services of the second day of Shavuot. And then the next opportunity after that will be Yom Kippur, which I think will be the 21st of September, I think. That day will be the 21st of September, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. But I think you'll have some advance warning about when Yom Kippur will be. So you'll find out. I recognize that there are certainly colleagues or people who might disagree with what I'm saying regarding Yisker. And if you want to ask questions or comment about that, I'm happy to open that up, or also happy to take any questions over these next few minutes about Shavuot, anything that we talked about there.
I have a question, but it's not about Shavuot. Does the synagogue do anything regarding Holocaust Remembrance Day?
So I don't believe that there is going to be a synagogue program about it. Is and maybe I missed, is KJA doing something?
Yeah, typically that is done through KJA as a community wide, and it will be on the Sunday after. So it's the 14th is Tuesday, the following Sunday. I want to say at 3 in the afternoon, but it's a Holocaust survivor is speaking. It's usually about a 2-hour long program, hour for speaking, hour for doing everything else. But yes, that's usually done as a community through KJA.
It's 6 p.m.
Is it 6 p.m.?
I
Okay.
just looked it up. Yeah.
Okay. I don't think you have to register to come. But if you need details, you can call the KJA building on Monday. It should, I don't know if it came out in new news this week. It may be next week it comes out in odd news, but if you're getting the KJA blast, it was in there.
Really appreciate that. And the other thing I should note, and this is going to be kind of a follow-up for something I mentioned at the class last week. Tomorrow night is the Justice Knox Nehemiah Action Assembly, and Yom HaShoah actually begins that night. And there was a question of whether it's going to be mentioned. So the last couple of days I've been corresponding with the executive director of Justice Knox, and she very kindly invited me to give the closing benediction at um, the Nehemiah Action program. And so I'm going to, in my closing prayer, I am going to mention Yom HaShoah and then tie it into the importance of the work that Justice Knox does. So anyway, so there will be a reference to that at that point as well. But yeah, Richard, thank you for asking that. I mean, and Mark, thanks for filling in the details there. Other things.
We
Don't
probably
they have
talked about,
blitzes on them, Shavuot?
Blintzes on Shavuot.
Yeah.
Many people have them. Yes, it's pretty typical. Mark Siegel, yes.
we probably talked about this before, but how is fish dairy?
Um, it's not, well, okay, fish isn't dairy, but it is considered to be flexible enough to be eaten both at a meat meal and at a dairy meal. Um, uh, it's
It's like O negative blood or something.
I know, I hear you. No, it's
It has
you know,
superpowers.
it's pretty it's pretty amazing, you know. These were matters kind of, I think, really settled by rabbinic sages and probably more recently, like by sages of the Middle Ages in the law codes, where the determination was that the idea of not mixing milk and meat, that the sort of the ultimate example of that was like beef, right? It was like, no way can we mix, beef with dairy. And that poultry, even though poultry, they're not, I mean, there's no, like it's not meat, it's not the same thing, but like poultry got lumped into the meat category, and fish was considered different enough that it's like, well, it can be, we can have it during meat meals, we can have it for dairy meals. I'm not remembering all the rationale behind why that can be flexible, but yeah, all hail the flexible fish. What can I tell you? All right. Anything else? Any other questions or comments? I will be in Knoxville briefly tomorrow evening for the Nehemiah Action rally. And then we will have our next class as per usual next Sunday. I think I will talk about Tisha B'Av. I think, since we've been talking about holidays, I think Tisha B'Av will be the last holiday for me to go over that I haven't really gone over yet. So I figure, why don't we just do that next week, and then we'll continue on to other topics beyond that. So Tisha B'Av next week, which I will acknowledge, it's a tough one to end on because it is sad, but it's still an important one that we need to discuss. So I will look forward to hopefully seeing you for Nehemiah Action if you can, and then regardless, catching you online next week.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Rabbi.
Rabbi.
Safe travels.
Thanks much.
There is going to be a pizza party at 5 tomorrow evening with the Nehemiah Assembly people from Heskamuna. And then we're gonna, I don't know, carpool or caravan or go over separately or whatever. And if you want to be a part of that, you should probably contact Abraham Brightstein or Teresa Love, so that we have enough pizza.
Yeah.
I'm told there's going to be a very big turnout for that. So yeah.
Terrific, terrific. And the most important thing is that it will be pizza on bread, right? No matzo pizza anymore. We're good. We're good for a year. All right. Take care, everybody.